This is Playlist Parlay, and that was music by Brian Ho off of his new album, Bridges. Episode 9, The Essential Killers with Grover Anderson. Hey everybody, my guest today is Grover Anderson, and we're going to talk about The Killers and some Brandon Flowers solo tracks, but mostly The Killers. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I'm great. So let's talk about how you got into music as a boy here in Calaveras County.
As a young squire?
Yeah.
Well, you'd have to go back to the Michelson Elementary talent show in which I sang Rodeo by Garth Brooks.
Okay.
In that talent show to a karaoke cassette. And I had to change, the line was that damned old rodeo, and I think I had to change it to dang old rodeo, which really was an important thing about I learned about sacrificing your principles for art and stuff. No, I'm just kidding. No, yeah, I grew up, my Uncle Bob, my dad's brother, had a band that he'd play with. My dad would do like weddings and stuff. My dad wrote songs as well. He always had I remember his red notebook forever that he would typewrite his songs onto. And he'd play them quite a bit at home. And from there, I just watched. And my aunt Linda was this amazing singer who actually went to Nashville for a little bit and tried to make it out there. And so my dad's side of the family, I had all these musical people. And it was just always around. And when you're a kid and all the people you look up to are doing it, you want to do it too. And so really it's just a lifelong exercise in emulation, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. You just came from a radio interview this morning too for KKBN, right?
I did, yes. It was very fun.
Doubling up today.
In fact, Alicia was talking about which artist she was going to choose when she did your podcast.
Fantastic.
Although we have to talk to her because she wanted to do Garth Brooks. And I would like to do Garth Brooks too, but of course Garth Brooks has decided that his music will not live on beyond our generation because he doesn't let his music stream.
Right.
So you can't listen to him on Spotify or any other place. And so honestly, that would have been my pick for this episode, but it doesn't work with the format because we can't make a Spotify playlist for Garth Brooks. So I had to move down the list.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting financial decision for him.
I think he's got some exclusive contract with Amazon. And if you've listened to my music, you know how I feel about Amazon.
Yeah, so, it's our favorite.
Yes. So I guess you could stream it, but man, to not make yourself available on the popular, I want to just buy high quality, downloads of the songs and just put them in my playlist or whatever. And I can't even do that, and that just drives me insane.
Yeah, it'd be cool if Spotify had some purchasable stuff, so it ended up.
Well, there are means by which you can put your own files into Spotify. It's arduous. I figured it out back when I was a regular Spotify user. But then once we're already going on to my personal weird stuff, but I'm an Apple Music guy to the core now. And a huge part of it is that your own library can be in there. I have so many live recordings and bootlegs and stuff that you can't hear anywhere else, but it's easy to get them in my Apple Music playlist, and it's easy to stream them on my phone now in a way that wasn't on most other streaming services.
Yeah, I agree. Some of the old purchases before I got into Spotify, I was an Apple Music guy, and then somebody convinced me to join Spotify.
Yeah, it was the thing back then. It was the music of the world of music in your pocket instantly, and I think they've probably been passed up. The audio quality on Apple Music is really the main thing for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough. Even if you download it locally with Spotify, I think streaming on Apple's actually better than the saved locally.
But regardless of which one I'm doing, I can't listen to my freaking Garth, and it just I can listen to 96 kilobit music that I ripped from a CD back when I had a tiny hard drive and was trying to keep it small. But you want to talk about music quality, those files sound like trash. And so
I might be able to help you out. I think I've got a lot of those CDs still and can rip them at a much higher quality for you.
That's good to know.
Yeah, I think they're all in the other garage, actually.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, so tell me about your songwriting process. As a songwriter, how do you usually approach a new song, and what inspires you?
The main process, and it does vary from time to time. I wouldn't say there's any one universal thing that's like the rule. But for me, it's almost always a line. Just always one line that just runs through my head nonstop. There was a poor old Lampalier. I was like, what the hell is that? I don't know. And that probably sat in my head for months before I sat down and wrote that song. Philip Marshall Cates was born in Care. I was like, what is this? Okay. And so a lot of times it's just one line. It's not always the first line, but oftentimes it is. And I just stew on that forever. And I'll look at it. I come back to it. On Blanket. On a night so cold, you can almost see your prayers. That line, I was just like, I've got to do something with that. And I wrote that in bed years and years ago, and I never got anything out of it. And what's funny, I had a really good example of this. I was at a songwriting retreat where you were working with professional songwriters and running stuff by them and getting feedback and stuff. And the goal of this was you had essentially 2 days to write and perform a song while at this camp, and honor system and stuff. And the idea that I came up for with the song was this line, we tell the children a gentle kind of truth. And then I stewed on that for a while in much more condensed time. And I wrote a whole song around that idea of telling the children the truth, but lying about it. And it was interesting because I went to the main teacher of this program to get some feedback on it. And he looked at the song and he goes, this is a great song. That line's got to go. And I was like, wait, what? And he was like, yeah, this whole line is showing. It's all talking about action and things that are happening. And then in this line, we tell the children a gentle kind of truth. You're telling. You're presenting a judgment or some kind of analysis. When the rest of this song, the strength of it is it doesn't do that. And it was really, kind of a punch in the face for me. Is like, oh, but I built the whole song around this line, and being less precious about that is something that I kind of want to be better about going forward, because I think he was right. And I did change the line, and I made them show, not tell lines and stuff. Yeah, historically, it's one line, and people always say, do you do the melody first or the lyrics first? I'm normally singing the lyric as I write them, so it's kind of at the same time. But then once the lyrics are down and I roughly know how it goes, then I just get out the guitar and say, okay, I can't let this be a 4-chord song that everyone has heard before. I don't have a 1-6 or 1-5-6-4, whatever, the wagon wheel progression, the I'm Yours progression, every big pop song. The only song I have that comes close to that is Wasps, and I very intentionally put a minor second in there just to not have that. So once the lyrics are down, then it becomes all right, let's mess with this surely very standard and not very interesting progression in my head, and how can I work with this? Lately, I've been on a pretty hard kick of, I'm really enjoying this idea of within a section of a song, no repeats. And the chorus of Well.
Right.
Very intentionally, there's no line that has the same musical phrasing as a previous line. A lot of my songs lately, I'm finding are like that, because I just think it's really fun, and it probably drives Dave and every bass player I work with insane.
Sure.
But it's interesting to me.
Well, it just means that it's I think it's more musically interesting to do that, but it just means everyone really has to know the material.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to quiz the guys I play with. it does when I'm performing the song. Maybe it's something I learned from Moonshine. I've been playing that song for 15 years now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
That the verses of that song are just 2 chords, and the chorus is really just 4 chords with some little flourishes here and there and stuff. It's easy for me to go on autopilot singing that song. It's easy for me I know this, I can do it well without thinking. It's a way, by being a little more complicated and being more of a challenge, like, hey, you better memorize these songs that you're writing so that every time you're playing them, you're thinking about them, you're present. It's a way of kind of holding myself accountable as a performer from the songwriter perspective.
One of the things Mikkel and I noticed, we were talking last week, and I don't think it made it to the show, but one of the conversations we had was about you and your songwriting, and she sees you pretty much every year at Hermit Fest.
Yeah.
And just sees you that one time a year, really, because she doesn't live locally. Mm-hmm. And one of her observations, which I agree with, was the idea that at some point, about the time you had kids, you shifted from being a songwriter that was an observer about everything in the world around you to writing about yourself. And writing where you're a character in your own songs, or your people are really in the songs more than you're just observing the world around you.
That's an interesting observation, because I don't think she's way off or anything, but all of those old observing style songs, they're pretty much all rooted in my life, rooting in talking to me. And there was probably a lot of, shell. Here's the shell. This is a song about me. This is a very personal song, but I'm going to wrap it up in all this other stuff that disguises it.
Right.
The Lampalier is about a song about someone with ambition who doesn't know what to do with it and keeps screwing up. And he screws up so bad that he can't go back. And Boulder is literally just a song about, like, hey man, don't let yourself get too caught up about this relationship that didn't work, because that can go really bad for you. That's really the point of Boulder. It's a cautionary tale about not ruining your life over something that didn't work out the way you wanted it to.
Right.
And so all those are songs that they're very autobiographical, but you're right, they are presented as observations. Whereas to now, I'm probably going the opposite way. Like, a buddy of mine called me after he heard Well, and he was like, oh, do you got another kid on the way? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, the line says 3 babies will open your eyes. You only have 2 kids. And I was like, oh, no, that's just my way of making that song a little bit less exactly about me. So now I'm almost obfuscating the other direction.
Sure.
No, you guys are right. I definitely am. I don't think that I'm choosing to write about myself. And I don't even think that, like, the only inspirations I'm getting now are myself and my family. Because I certainly drew on that for pretty much everything I'd ever written. But I'm kind of definitely giving myself more permission to let that be the root and then grow out that way, instead of how am I going to talk about this thing that I'm going to talk about without being too revealing.
Sure.
Yeah.
So do you think that some of that is small town stuff?
To a degree. I don't know that. Well, that's a hell of a segue into the subject matter that we're talking about later, by the way.
Sure.
But it's got to be to a certain degree. I mean, I had this whole album, All the Lies That I've Told, where I realized I was writing that, and maybe that's where that turn that Michaela and you were talking about, like, started to take its shape. But, the things that come from being a small town are everyone knows your business, and you're going to say the same things over and over again because you're going to get asked the same questions over and over again. And it was so funny, like, talking about the radio interview this morning.
Right.
I was like, all right, well, I'm talking to Alicia, and this is the way she's asking the question. And then I went next door to Star, and Mark asked me a couple questions, and I was like, well, now I know this is a different audience, so I've got a different type of answer for this. And knowing... political is maybe the word, to navigate that kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't like it when people are precious about being from a small town. I think that's really corny, because I think every community has its community, and every community has those rules that have far more in common from A to B than we would ever admit.
Sure. When you're in the city, you have a neighborhood.
Exactly.
And it's still its own little small community. It's just right next door to another one, instead of there's some miles between them.
Exactly. And so without giving too much power to that idea that a small town is special in a way that other communities aren't. I mean, certainly, yeah. I mean, if I'm writing a song about getting divorced in a small town and what you tell your friends, I'm not going to run from that.
Yeah. How do we, because I play with you most of the time, go from our small town Tuolumne, Calaveras County to bigger audiences? Because we've done it, and we've done it successfully. But how did we successfully make that transition?
I'll let you know when we figure it out.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a process for sure.
But, and you know, it is tricky. I mean, there are times, speaking like to what Michaela said and stuff, I feel like if I had figured out how to write the kind of songs or the kind of style that I have later at this age, like I put myself out there so hard with a lot of frankly bad music. There's an album that we still play 2 songs off of, but it doesn't exist on the internet anywhere. Yeah. But you know, I wasn't ready. I didn't have the life experience or the practice, frankly, to write that type of music, you know? And I really, you know, as a kid, I did the talent shows and that kind of stuff, but I didn't, you know, I meet a lot of people who play music and started writing early, and they were playing songs at high school. And I wasn't that guy with the guitar at high school, thank God. But you know, I didn't start putting myself out there songwriting until I was probably like 19, 20. And you know, that's when a lot of people have been doing it in their bedrooms for years. And I was the age where I felt confident to put myself out there, but I didn't have the chops or the reps to be doing that. And that was, you know, definitely a mistake in retrospect, but I also don't know if I would have pursued it as wholeheartedly, because people even responded to that bad stuff that I wrote. And I think that was more responding to the energy of the show or something like that. Certainly wasn't to my vocal quality.
Yeah.
But so I one thing that I looked at a lot is for artists that were not superstars, but were doing what they wanted to do, making a living playing music and stuff. And a lot of it came from just being willing to be big fish in small pond, as opposed to going out and moving to LA or moving to Nashville and like going for it. And I chose the smallest pond of Calaveras County, California. But you know, coming back home, and like I said, I was already writing songs inspired by this, you know, before I moved home. And saying like, you know, I just like playing around here. There's the economic side of, there were just wineries everywhere that wanted me to play. You know, at this songwriting retreat, everyone's talking about their careers and stuff. And I told them, I was like, look, the best thing I have going and the worst thing I have going is that every weekend I don't have to go less than a mile from my house to play for brand new people than I played last weekend at the same venue.
Right.
You know, we're a tourist town. People come and people go. And so that's just, it's perfect for being close to home, having your family and still getting to play music and getting that reward of having people hear your songs for the first time. But obviously that's never going to be enough if you actually want to get out beyond the foothills of California. And so, you know, some of those opportunities came, like, you remember Claim Steak, how they just saw us at Irish Days.
When the PA died or something.
Yeah, exactly. And they invited us to come play their brewery. And from there, you know, I made these connections with them, and then playing like their little parties and their festivals and stuff. I made really cool connections with artists who are big now that played those.
Right.
And one of them, who was a teacher at this camp, of all things, I was like, hey, remember when you played right before me at a festival in Sacramento? And I was like, yeah, you kicked my butt, buddy. But from there, you know, you make those connections. Small towns are generally populated by people who've come from the bigger ones. And so through there, you just pitch and you submit, and the nice thing is we have people who are enthusiastic about our music. We're very, very lucky to have people that come to every show, that know the words, that sing along. And we receive love from this community that we would never get outside of it.
Yeah, that I agree with.
And through that, you generate content, video, you can show, like, look at all these people responding to my posts on Facebook and all that kind of stuff that sucks, but it matters to the people that make those decisions and make those business decisions. And so, you know, we get to pitch to festivals, and most of the time they're like, who the hell are you? But every once in a while they're like, yeah, come to Alaska and play Salmon Fest. And play against the California Honey Drops at the same time on a smaller stage, and see if you can pull people away going to the bathroom. and doing that and feeling really good about it. Yeah,
we kept a small little crowd in spite of a really big fish on the stage next door.
And the downside is that, like, you know, I'm playing the Sag Harbor Music Festival in September, and I play the Tucson Folk Festival and stuff, and that's not something where the money is there to bring the band, and that sucks, because I'm always there thinking, God, if I had Josh and Marshall and Dave here, like, we would be lighting this place up. But, you know, I'm lucky to be recouping my plane ticket for those types of things. It is funny. I do have friends that are professional musicians, friends that work with big time names. And the most disappointing thing I hear every time is they go, oh no, everyone that you've heard of that's making it, or that's like bubbling up, they had a backer, like they had money behind them. And maybe my friends are just trying to make me feel better, which very well could be it. But, I've had a very privileged upbringing and growing up, middle class, like not worrying about a lot of things. But and being encouraged to go play music, go do this, son, even though you're chasing a dream that's like insane. But, I never have been able to just do this for a living. And, at this songwriting retreat, watching the teachers, I'm seeing what they're doing, and I would just sit and stare and try and take information and steal their tricks. It's like watching a carpenter work with wood. I was
sure.
like, this is, wow, the fact that he's figuring this out. And watching, and I in my head going, what does he have that I don't? And kind of realizing, well, there's certainly a lot of talent there, but it's also reps. This is his job.
Yep.
Writing songs is not my job. I wish it was, but instead I'm doing it, and I'm working really hard on this one song, when his job is to write 10 songs and maybe one of them is worth keeping.
Right.
And
you get the inspiration to just develop an idea and hope it turns into...
And every song that gets beyond my notes app is an investment now.
Sure.
Which is certainly not a complaint, but that is not what a career musician is doing, a career songwriter is doing. Capitalizing on those opportunities, knowing your margin for error is infinitely smaller than these people who are out touring all the time and stuff. And just really working on that pitch and working on what you put out to say, okay, I'm proud of this, and maybe somewhere at some tiny little festival, someone will hear this and say, yeah, we'll give him a side stage.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen near as much as I would like it to, but when it does happen, man, you show up at that show and you be ready to kick ass.
Yeah. Well, that's good stuff. So how does you wanting to choose Garth Brooks first translate to the Killers? What's the relationship there?
So there are a few bands which, like, weirdly to me make sense, tracing to like me and the songwriter that I listen to, that probably make less and less sense to someone who doesn't know me really well. And so I would start at Garth Brooks and that type of 90s country, which is really storytelling, really like adult music, like 90s and pretty much all country before, Toby Keith started singing about solo cups, rest in peace, was music about adult stories and life, and not necessarily wanting to party and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And in the 90s, about the same time, you get that shift from rock music starting to become the way, that post-grunge, like not Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, but coming out of, you get Matchbox 20. Okay. That debut album is adult music. It's songs about domestic abuse and growing up poor and that kind of stuff. From there, you get, it's the same thing, Counting Crows. Like, these are all bands that I thought about doing, and Counting Crows telling these stories about just mental illness and
right.
And they were beyond. I'm 10 when I'm hearing these songs for the first time, and so I'm not really grasping the depth of them that I meant to grasp, but still connecting with them in a way that hit me in the exact same angle that the Garth Brooks songs did. That a song like Somewhere Other Than the Night, or the Thunder Rolls, like I didn't understand domestic abuse when I'm watching that music video,
right?
But I knew, I was like, this is stuff that's worth paying attention to, and so I saw that through those kind of alternative 90s rock bands and stuff, and which really meant that I was ready by the time I was in high school and probably able to grasp more of this stuff. When a band like the Killers comes out, and we're going to talk about the lyrical content of some of their songs going forward.
Yeah.
That resonated with me in a way that was like, whoa, the fact that you can make this fun rock music that makes me want to jump up and down in the concert and scream along, but also know what these songs are about. And that train for me was it's easy in my brain to connect, even though musically I'm sure it makes no sense at all. My summer before my junior year was defined by like 2 songs coming out, and those 2 songs were Somebody Told Me by the Killers and Harder to Breathe by Maroon 5. And okay. I know those aren't like the best songs in the world or anything, but though, being in the car and hearing those 2 songs and being like, oh, this is like a new pop rock. Like it certainly is derivative, and it draws on all these other things that I don't think any song we're going to talk about today is original or like, oh my God, this changed music. But I remember the first time I heard Somebody Told Me, and then listened to the entire that first album. I thought, oh, this is going to be my classic rock. Hearing Marshall talk about Van Halen, and hearing bands talk about like, oh, this defined this thing for me. I was a 16-year-old already being like, when I'm 40, I'm going to be driving around listening to The Hawk, and they're going to be playing this song, and I'm going to love it.
Right.
And as someone who grew up feeling like we don't, my generation, I was past Nirvana. My cousin showed me Nirvana, but I was too young.
Right. That was more high school for me.
Yeah. And we lamented, like, man, we're not going to have that iconic music that previous generations have had. I remember graduating high school and we talked about, we're going to have Eminem, cool, I guess, like 50 Cent, yay, that's what we're going to celebrate as the iconic music of our time. And really it was right in front of us. It was the stuff like The Killers that, really does. The high school kids listen to this kind of stuff today.
Well, one of the things for me in taking a deeper dive, I mean, The Killers are an interesting band because I've had to learn a bunch of these tunes for cover bands that I've been in. So I know the material, but I've never sat down and listened to an album. I've never listened to nothing but The Killers for a few hours at a go before the last couple days here. And the thing I noticed most is how much there's an homage to Springsteen and Billy Joel and U2. There's these little elements of these songs that are really, really like these late 70s, 80s bands. They're not copying. I don't want to say it's a copy, but
certainly
the
inspired.
Elements, the inspiration's there at a really obvious level. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. This is a Billy Joel tune that's not trying to copy Billy Joel, but it really has these elements.
Which, by the way, if you ask how does this connect to Garth Brooks, I mean, if you ask Garth Brooks what was inspiring him, it was
Kiss.
Billy Joel, Kiss, Bob Seger. These things that, like, when you listen to The Killers, when you listen to Brandon Flowers sing, you're just like, oh, yeah, okay. And so while the music that they each took from growing up listening to that, and, Garth Brooks is 15, 20 years older than Brandon Flowers, but the music, the things that they took were different. And certainly, I think with The Killers, you have Joy Division as such a strong influence as well, and that electronic rock of the '80s that doesn't show up in Garth's music very often.
Yeah.
But the roots, the core ideas are so present in both completely different styles of music, and I bet you most people who are listening to this and know me are like The Killers. What? I don't hear any of this in Grover. Like, where's the influence there? And that's probably true, and yet it's probably more likely what I'm putting on in my car when I'm driving. And Brandon Flowers' voice, I sound nothing like him, but when I'm singing along in the car driving to and from Santa Barbara in college, like, this is what I sound like, trying to emulate his voice, which may or may not show up in the way I sing now, but it's all rooted in the same thing, even though the results are completely different.
Sure. And the other thing about The Killers, before we start getting into our actual list, is I just want to call out the drummer, who I looked up, Ronnie Vannucci.
Yeah.
Just a couple years older than me, this guy out of Vegas. So when he was recording this stuff, he was only early 20s, like maybe 25. And he's laying down some really interesting grooves. And, it's a little bit like that Blink-182 kind of aggressive rock, but it's also a lot of tom work that's kind of Larry Mullins Jr. Just really interesting drummer. And really, I think, from my perspective, made The Killers have the sound that it did. And there's a lot of cool layering. I'm not trying to discount anyone else, but as a drummer who I don't hear get talked about a lot, this dude should be on drummers' radars. This guy's amazing.
And while you're going that side of the rhythm section, what I, listening to a lot of these songs last few days, for me, I was like, what is it about The Killer? There's a lot of things I like about Brandon Flowers, but it's got to be more than just a singer-songwriter situation. And the bassist, for me, is your reaction to the drummer is the exact same reaction I have to the bassist. He just, in so many songs, you'll hear me call out, like, just that thing between the verse and the chorus here or something. It's I don't have the technical language that you have to describe it, but when I'm listening to the songs now, what actually analytically, like, what's the hook? What's got me so hard in? It's just the transitions. And most of the time under the lyrics, he's just, dum, 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 dum. There's nothing fancy, but his transitions that he makes and his slides, the rhythm section of this band is amazing.
Is the lineup for this band the same? I didn't get enough into the research. Is it a 5-piece?
So what's interesting is I was looking up now. I think they started as a 4-piece, and I'm sure touring they have 2 or 3 more guys that play with them.
Sure.
But I remember hearing an interview 2 albums ago that they did on a podcast, and it was just Flowers and Vannucci. And they essentially, the host was talking, well, they really are the Killers. Like, the other guys come and go and stuff. But even now, looking at their Wikipedia, because I wanted to call out the bassist, and I was like, well, maybe it's a different guy from the Hot Fuss album or something. But, excuse me, it looks like came and went, maybe took some time off from the band, came back. And the 4 guys that they call out now are Brandon Flowers, Benucci, Dave Koenig, and Mark Stromer. Mark Stromer being the bassist that I'm talking about.
Okay.
And I think they're back to the 4 of them touring. I don't know for sure, though.
Okay. Yeah, this would be a cool band to try to see live.
I've seen the band twice, and I've seen Brandon Flowers solo once. And I will save the times that I've seen them for various songs because I wanted it.
Sure. Well, this is on my radar now. I mean, this is, like I said, when Marshall and I played in The Shades with Francisco, we played at least 2 or 3 Killers tunes, and I just learned them. I didn't really connect at the time. It was just like learn the material. And I really feel like I've done myself a disservice by not having paid more attention to this band up till now.
It's the secret to their success because multiple songs we're going to talk about. It's not much, it's not that complicated what they're doing, but the execution of it is and so it becomes easy. Like that's probably why they're so popular as a rock band today. Is that they let you passively listen if you want. They let you just kind of learn it. And, okay, I got the bare bones of it, and if it doesn't hook you, you're not missing that much. But if you're willing to dig in, you get it.
Yeah, and it didn't take a lot of. I mean, I guess it's a little bit kind of just seems like pop rock. It's like there's not a lot of depth there.
We'll talk about this during Mr. Brightside.
Yeah,
that is the best example of exactly what you're talking about.
Sure. All right. Well, let's take a little break and we'll get into the actual list here.
Cool.
All right. So we'll go over the rules. We usually do 10 songs a piece. I go first. That way you get the last word, and we count backwards from 10 back to 1. So we talk about our favorite cuts last. Perfect. So my number 10 is Runaways, which we just talked about it a minute ago, but a lot of these tunes I found really feel like they're an homage to another artist from earlier. Mm-hmm. And this just feels like a Billy Joel tune. He even sounds like he's singing with like Billy Joel's vocal quality in this. It's got a piano intro. It's got a theme that's not super modern. It's kind of a theme that feels like it's from, the 60s or 70s even. It's just kind of an older, that Flower Generation kind of theme. And great drumming and everything else about the Killers that I really enjoy. But it just felt like a throwback tune that really sounded good to me. I don't know how popular it was, but...
One thing that I love about the Killers, and that I do actually see something that I try and do similarly, is each of their albums like really ties into a theme, like musically and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think you've latched on really well to find that album. This is actually probably one of my least favorite albums of theirs.
Okay.
But it is the second time I saw the Killers live was that they were headlining Outside Lands in San Francisco, and this album had just came out, and they played Runaways, and it was like their big, I don't know if it's never gonna be their last song because we know what their last song is gonna be. We'll talk about later, but
right.
It did. I'd listened to the album and been mostly kind of meh on it, and I remember hearing the song and be like, oh, okay, maybe I should go back and revisit it because it is a great live song, which is probably a lot of the Billy Joel stuff, but they're also a great live band, so that's not shocking at all.
Yeah, I don't have a lot else to say about it. It didn't jump out for any specific musical component or quality other than I just like, wow, this is a clearly an homage to an artist that was done in a way that wasn't a copy. It didn't feel cheap. It just felt like respect. It was a very respectful thing, and it's a great tune. All this stuff is like I can turn these guys on all day and be totally happy with it.
Well, and I'm glad that Battleborn is represented because I think that's the only song that's going to be from that album on either of our lists.
Yeah.
Which is okay. And speaking of tough decisions, this is my only song off of their third album, Day and Age, which is my number 10, which is Losing Touch.
Okay.
And a couple things to know about my feelings about the Killers. They are one of the best first track bands. Like their first song is always going to be just kick butt. And Losing Touch is the first song on Day and Age. And if you've been listening to the Killers, like chronologically, the album 1 and 2 are night and day. They're just completely different. And so when they came out with that third album, what are they going to do? And they've actually found a pretty impressive way to meld the two sounds from the first two albums together. And I think it shows up really well in Losing Touch. Lyrically, it's not much.
Right.
But it's a lot of minor key kind of stuff. The bass is neat, and then it really starts showing off something. It happens throughout the album, and there's going to be a better example to talk about later on your list. But where it's a rock song, and then it just pulls back, and he starts singing in that higher register, and he lets the spatial, arrangement just do so much work for him and for the band that I'm not allowed to sing. I assume, but just that hook and console me in my darkest hour is how the verses start out, and it's a hell of a way to begin an album, with a line like that. You're like, oh, this is what I signed up for,
right?
Because this was a party band. What am I getting into? And it sets the tone for what is a kind of forgotten album of theirs. Like, there's not a lot of huge hits off of it, but it's worth checking out, and it's worth the time. And it hurt to take the other songs off of this album that I did include on my list.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So that puts my number 9, which is Still With You.
Still Want You.
Still Want You. That's right, because I can read my own handwriting.
I am so happy you included. This was the last one I took off of my list. This was my 11.
Okay.
And so when I saw that you put it, I jumped for joy. I love this song.
So for me, it's this chorus.
Yeah.
Like what it just sucks you in. It's so much fun. It's kind of a serious verse, and then just this fun, singable chorus that, again, is kind of a throwback. I can't think of like which band specifically it's reference, but it just feels like an older tune, like from when I was a kid.
Well, and we should frame that this is from Brandon Flowers' second solo album.
Correct. This
album's called The Desired Effect, and even those two solo albums are just completely different. And his second one, this is from, is probably my second favorite Killers associated album that they've got. The mix on this song is one of the most impressive things to me, because still, like, the way that the chorus sounds, what you're talking about, it's almost like the choir that's singing is underwater or something, and yet it doesn't feel kitschy. It doesn't feel like it's this tacky, like, mixing effect, and yet no matter how loud you turn this up, you wish it was a little louder. It's such a powerful song in terms of leaving you wanting more, and it's got like the tropical vibe to it.
Right.
Which the verses you were talking about, they're serious lyrically.
Right.
But like the melody, do 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 do, like the melody of the verse, while it's very serious lyrics, it's almost like silly and goofy, and it's meant to catch you off guard, and yet he's saying serious things, but then he just comes in with like this almost like Coco Cabana.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's fun. It's a little bit. That's an interesting choice, but it's interesting to me because it's exactly what I thought of the Killers. On a surface level, I probably wouldn't pay attention to the lyrics of the verse. It's like, it's kind of got this Havana kind of groove or whatever. Oh, and here's a chorus. It's really simple and I can sing along to, and I don't need to think about anything. It's just got this catchy thing. And that was kind of my experience with this band, is here's a catchy thing to pay attention to. But as soon as I actually paid attention, like, there's a depth here that really goes unnoticed if you don't look for it.
And it's a very great example of, which there's a ton of examples on both of our lists, of Brandon Flowers can write a bridge. Like that bridge just takes a song in a completely different direction, and you're like, how are they even going to come back from this musically, thematically? It's a hard gear shift. And then at the end of the bridge, there's just this hard, slow build that all of a sudden goes right back into the chorus in this just perfect way. And it's pretty masterful to hear the way that either on his solo albums or with the band, he's able to do that. So it's one of his best tricks, I think. It's like you're listening to a different song, and then it shouldn't be able to go so smoothly back into what he was previously doing, and it does.
Well, he's got good players around him for sure too. That
this album in particular, I mean, if I pulled up the Wikipedia looking, he had just like murderer's row of studio musicians. There's one song where he's clearly trying to do a Bruce Hornsby. I forget which song it is, but he's going for that vibe. And you could hire a studio player, or if you front one of the biggest rock bands in the world, you just call up Bruce Hornsby and have him come play piano on your song. So yeah, it's the musicians. I mean, the Killers are a great band already, but I think one of the things he clearly relished in the solo projects is making every phone call he wanted to.
Sure. So the drummer for these solo albums is a guy, Darren Beckett, who's Irish.
Huh.
And don't know him. I've never, but he's just a super versatile player. He's a jazz, blues, rock. He just kind of does the gamut of every style. He's not associated with a specific band. He's just a drummer's drummer from the research I did. And I think his work on these solo cuts is fantastic.
Yeah.
Real different style from Ronnie, but you can tell this guy's got some chops. And I don't mean chops in the sense that he's a show-off, flashy player. He's just a very versatile player.
Yes.
So yeah, really interesting stuff musically all around. So that puts us at your number 9.
My number 9 is called Rut, and I realize that I'm setting a certain tone by my first song being called Losing Touch, my second song literally starting Don't Give Up on Me, I'm Just in a Rut. I promise I will get more optimistic, but not too optimistic. This is my only song from the Wonderful, Wonderful album, and I'm by the way, I kind of let Josh handle the hits on this, and I'm going for the stuff that you might not have heard. In Rut, I was looking, it's like the least listened to song on Spotify on that album, at least last time I checked.
Wow.
I know. It's probably because it starts with this weird, like, auto-tuned, high-pitched thing, which was kind of representative of the time, like when you're Kanye West or Bon Iver, like that was a thing when this album came out, was that weird modulated, sped-up sounding thing. But this song just goes to all kinds of places. It very quickly... it builds and builds and builds, and then it does that great bridge thing again. This is a dancing about architecture style song,
right? Because
you got to listen to it. But the things that it does, it's so powerful. And then by the end, he does that hard shift into the whole group is singing, and they're singing lyrics that are connected to the beginning of the song, but they've taken it in a new direction. And then the way that thematically the song comes back to that intro. Right at the end, just barely. It's like a hint of it. It's such a well-produced and composed song.
Yeah, this reminds me a lot of this is before I was involved with you, but reminds me a lot of Grindstone, where Grindstone has this dynamic growth and then tapers right back down to the simple start at the end. It's just kind of this really dynamic shift. And dynamics can sort of mean, really, it's specifically, it's just volume. Mm-hmm. But it also can be like how many people are playing. Yeah. You can add to the dynamic of a song by starting with just piano or just organ or whatever it is. And then you layer, then the drums come in, and then a little more complicated bass line, and then guitars on top, then organs, and then background singers, and then strings, and then it tapers back down. You start removing those elements. So I think that's a big part of what's going on in this tune, Rut, is that he's adding a bunch of different elements, a lot of different instruments, and then kind of pulling them back out as you
100%.
And it's just really well done.
And lyrically, it's not a song that's going to blow your mind. It's literally about being in a rut. But that crescendo of the song, I'll climb and I'll climb and I'll climb, that he's just singing over and over again. It's powerful. And then to come back on and this is, thank you for that Grindstone comp. I think the difference is he finds the optimism there that I couldn't. With that, like, just don't give up on me, is really the idea of the song. And it's so effective.
Yeah. Good tune. I'm glad that you exposed me to it, because it's not a tune I'd ever heard before or
I don't think it's showing up on any greatest hits playlists or anything except for mine, damn it.
Yeah. Well, it's a good tune for sure. All right, so my number 8 is Read My Mind. And there seems to be a theme, at least in these next couple of mine, where he's exploring the idea of things that are sort of unsaid or awkward in relationships, and where things can be a little passive aggressive between like a couple and I don't know. I don't want to dig into like what people mean in lyrics, like, because they're, it's a little subjective to what you draw out of it. But it just seems like there's this theme where he's doing it. And that's kind of what captured me. It's just like there's a couple of tunes where I noticed that this is a thing he wants to engage with.
Well, and it's important to recognize that Sam's Town, this is an album about growing up in Las Vegas. Or growing up outside of Las Vegas, really. And so these things, a teenage queen, a loaded gun, drop dead dream, the chosen one, a southern drawl, the world unseen. Like it's so many references, and lyrically, it's just this was my life, or it's how he presents it, at least in the narrative of Brandon Flowers, the Vegas Kid. I'll be honest, this was like the second hit off of this album, And it was kind of a letdown for me when I first heard it. Now I certainly respect it as like, this is like one of their better songs for sure. But it never resonated with me the way that it clearly resonated with most people. And I don't know if it's something about, that first On the Corner of Main Street, trying to keep it in line. You say you want to move on, say I'm falling behind. For whatever reason, that doesn't catch me in a way that a lot of his other lyrics do, even though it's probably more profound than some of his other lyrics. But it also is something that I latched onto later in his music, which is, or in their music, because the band really does this really well. When you think of the Killers, you think of flashing lights and neon and big loud drums and synths and all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
And this is a great example of, no, they can pull off the mellow song.
Yeah.
To me, this is an early attempt at it, and it probably isn't effective as some of the songs that are higher on my list, but it's a great song.
Yeah, and that's kind of what jumped out at me for this one. It was just, it's a good tune. Because it's a little bit more reserved musically, there's not a lot technically to talk about other than exactly what you said, to demonstrate that this band, who can be very technically proficient and sort of bombastic, to pull way back and still be very effective. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So number 8 for you
is My Own Soul's Warning.
Yes.
And this is honestly, this pick is 100% vibes. This album came out like 2 months into COVID, and it was just being outside and like, what am I doing with my day? And I would just put this album on in the background. I could have chosen quite a few songs from this album, and this is the one I went with because it's track 1 and it's really effective as a track 1. But it's kind of them moving away really aggressively from a lot of the things that define them as the Killers. And it's a transition into their most recent album, which to me is their best album, which we'll talk about later. But you can hear the shift from, we are a loud, bombastic rock album to we're an album, or we are loud, bombastic rock band to we're a band that's focused on telling stories. And this is like that step down. It's kind of like the Revolver between Rubber Soul and Sgt. Pepper's. Like,
sure.
It's the transitional album. And I went back and listened to this because my feelings and memory of this album, I thought I was going to have 3 songs from here just from how happy it makes me to listen to. And honestly, this was the only one that I could pull out as something that's like, no, you really should listen to this song. But something about the feeling of this album, it's a band maturing. It's a band getting older. And on Day and Age, they could write lyrics about how they're getting older, but they were still doing the same tricks and still using the same things. And this one, all of a sudden, like you feel those bones settle in a way that I think is really impressive to listen to, because they do it so deftly. Like it should be a clumsy process, and it's not. And I really admire that. Yeah.
So this is the one where, when I heard it, the homage to me, this is their homage to Springsteen.
Oh, wow.
This is a Bruce Springsteen tune. In the same way that Runaways was a Billy Joel tune, mm-hmm. It's not a ripoff. It's a completely positive, we are influenced by this style, this sound. And I think now's a good time for me to talk about Brandon Flowers' chameleon vocals.
Yeah, oh gosh.
Man,
yeah.
what I mean, this guy can sound like the style of other people by not giving up his vocal quality. He always sounds like him, mm-hmm. but he can sound like him sounding like somebody else without really being an impersonation. And
there
that's
are
a
so
tough
many
thing to do.
examples of this, the Springsteen thing you're talking about on the Sam's Town album. I mean, we're going to talk When You Were Young later, and I don't know that it's as much on Read My Mind, but there are so many songs that he does that on that album that are worth calling out. I mean, Bones is such a just like wild song, which isn't on my list, but it's worth calling out as a song where he just taps into that Springsteen scene so well. And I think I've heard him talk about this in interviews before. Being from Vegas, like they do become this weird entertainment melting pot, because everyone comes through and they've got the residencies that happen, and it's so clear that he was there just soaking in everything from the big acts that came through to the tribute acts that were performing in the casinos and stuff. And yeah, I completely agree with that point about his vocal stylings. And that's kind of why higher on my list, I've got some songs that sound nothing like this at all.
Right.
But yeah, something about just the way that My Own Soul's Warning, when this album comes on, it just makes me feel a certain way of just like, yeah, this is rock music for being alone. Rock music for feeling alone.
Sure.
Which I think is an important thing to know about.
So my number 7 is Can't Deny My Love, which is off of one of the solo albums. Mm-hmm. And again, like I think this is another one where it's kind of like the story seems to be that maybe they just started dating and maybe not exclusive yet or something like that. And
you can run to the hillsides, you can try to lie, but you're not gonna.
Yeah, it's a smart tune. It's well written, and I think for people that are not getting married earlier in life, which I think is more and more common. I think more people are waiting till late 20s, even 30s now to really get hitched. I think we experience more of this than you know, the marrying the high school sweetheart. You know, you kind of have to deal with other people having careers and lives and everything else. And
there's such an urgency in the way he sings this chorus. It's driving me crazy. Like there's something, and the song for me, it's also on my list. It's even higher on my list, and it has a lot to do with the way that he delivers that chorus. It's so desperate without being whiny or anything. It's just he achieves that performance in there that is. I'm jealous every time I listen to this song.
Yeah, and the chorus is just the same line over and over, but delivered in a way that, you know, music's an interesting thing because, you know, the elements of what makes a song great are not always repeatable. No. Sometimes it's just the person saying it. Sometimes it's the thought in your head in the studio as you sing those words. And if you didn't have that thought that day and you weren't feeling that way, they wouldn't have been delivered that way.
And I'm guilty of many a pre-chorus. And I feel like my songwriting would be stronger if I didn't feel so married to a pre-chorus. The two lines that come between the verse and the chorus. You know, a lot of my songs have that. But the pre-chorus in this song, it's like it's him singing almost falsetto, and then I think a couple of people background vocals with him. That what's going on in my head now. That just the way that he's able to paint a picture and make you feel things again with lyrics that aren't that deep. But sonically they put you in a place that it's such a I keep coming back to all these songs. It's so well crafted.
Yeah.
Put together in a way that, damn man, it's good.
Is he the principal songwriter, or is it a band collaborative effort? I mean, I know this is a solo album, so maybe, but...
my understanding is that it's kind of him and one other guy. It might be the drummer. I don't know, but I think they're kind of music, lyrics together kind of thing.
Okay.
I know he plays keys. I've seen him play keyboard before, but when you see him live, he's kind of strutting around doing the Mick Jagger thing more than playing instruments other than some synths here and there.
Okay. So that puts us at your number 7.
This song should be higher because I listened to it again on the way over here and I was like, oh God, I forgot how much I love this song. It's called Quiet Town and it's from their most recent album, Pressure Machine. And this album is another like small town album. I believe there's a version of this that you can listen to where everyone starts with like interviews that he's done with people that grew up in small towns and like telling the stories. And so pretty hardcore concept album. But so every album is, you know, he took a story that he heard and then wrote a song based on that story. The first lines of Quiet Town are, a couple of kids got hit by a Union Pacific train carrying sheet metal and household appliances. A song that starts with that line should not be good.
Yeah.
A song start of the line should be like, what? This is stupid. It is such an impactful song. And when we talk about country music and like singing the praises of small town, so much of what country music that I've heard lately in the last 10, 15 years is we're better than you because we live in a small town, or you can't possibly understand what being a small town is. And all those songs fail in a way that this song just hits it on the head perfectly. This might be like my number 2 really in my heart. Like this song is so good. The second verse, when we first heard opioid stories, they were always in whispering tones. Now banners of sorrow mark the front steps of childhood homes. Parents wept through daddy's girl eulogies, and marriage bad milestones with their daughters and sons lying there lifeless in their suits and gowns. Somebody's been keeping secrets in this quiet town. Yeah. It's just and what's funny is when you hear, did you listen to this one, right?
Yeah,
Do you remember the intro to this song?
Yeah.
It's so completely the opposite of what these lyrics should say. It's this happy, like kind of vibey old school thing.
Well, so again, this is the one that to me, now this is the Tom Petty song.
Yeah.
And it reminds me very much of, you know, the Vampires, you know, hanging on in Santa Monica or whatever. I don't remember what the line is, but
Free Falling.
Yeah. So it's like okay, so he's gonna write about, you know, his town in a similar way to Free Fallin' is about
L.A.
L.A.
Yeah, and it's a great. There's no exceptionalism here. There's no you can't understand. This is coming from within, and the poison comes from within. But also, I mean, the verses are tough. The choruses do come through and say, you know, good people, Jesus fearing people are just trying to do their best, and it captures something that so much of country music, which I keep coming back to because I just feel so betrayed by so much of country music and popular country music and the way that they started putting their elbows out.
Yeah.
And this is a song that's like, no, this is the kind of stories that should be told and can be told in an interesting way. And if you're not afraid to say the song starts with two teenagers getting hit by a train, you're kind of, I can't sing them. You got to listen to the song because it works. And you know, we're going to keep going down this road of some pretty dark lyrics that get packaged in a way that if you don't really want to engage with the pain within them, you don't have to, which is a real gift that I think they give their audience.
All right. My number 6 is Crossfire, which is sort of the third in this series of 3 tunes that, like I said, it was just a theme. I was listening to him, like he seems to be dwelling on this thing of passive aggressive. It's hard to talk. You're in a relationship with someone and everything's going good. How do you bring up the thing that's not going right now? Mm-hmm. And do that in a way that doesn't make it worse. You know, I think Crossfire kind of addresses that again too. This is another one off one of the solo albums.
Yeah, this was his first solo album.
Okay.
I don't have as much insight. I spent a long time thinking The Desired Effect, his second solo album, was his only solo album.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I was like, I actually saw him live, which I'm going to talk about a little later, and doing a solo show that I was like, oh, he's got all these other songs I've never heard before. So I listened to Crossfire, and it's a great song. I don't have a lot to add to the conversation about it.
Yeah, me either. I thought it was interesting. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think that when we kind of decided how we're going to do this, I was going to do the hits because they're the tunes that I learned to play with other bands.
Yeah,
so I learned sort of the hits, and that's why I put them on my list. And then I kind of looked at what your list was. I'm like, well, okay, let me see if I can pull some stuff that's interesting to me that's not on yours. And this is another interesting tune.
Yeah.
Out of these 20 tunes, there's not one of these that that don't feel resonates with me.
And we left some stuff off that it was hard to say goodbye to.
Well, and this is the thing about good bands is that there's, you know, 10 is not enough. And that's why the premise of the show is kind of interesting. Is like, if you're going to get someone hooked, let's whittle it down to just the 10. Yeah. And what are the qualities about this band that makes you choose what they are? But Crossfire is another good tune. I think his solo stuff is very different from the Killers stuff.
Intentionally so, yeah.
But still on theme because what he wants to engage with thematically, lyrically, mm-hmm. I think is valuable for people to be listening to.
Absolutely. And there's a song on his second solo album, Ain't That the Way It Always Ends, I think. And it's another song about that same thematically. It's very similar to My Quiet Town, where you can tell he's getting older and his songwriting is changing. And it seems to be changing just perfectly aligned with my taste. Rock that you can scream in the car when I'm a teenager to now just meditations when I'm pushing 40.
Yeah. Wow, you're pushing 40. I'm getting old, man.
Cold world.
All right. So that puts us at your number 6.
My number 6 is Jenny Was a Friend of Mine. This is the first song on their first album.
Yep.
And you wanted to... What were your impressions when you heard this song? I want to hear you first.
So I love how the bass is mixed on this one.
Oh my God,
this
yes.
is the bass guitar song. Yeah, it's mixed so forward that it's like you never hear a tune mixed like this.
No,
and it's so cool.
Well, and imagine, me as in a junior in high school having listened to, the R&B of the time, which now you go back and listen, even like Matchbox 20 albums that were coming out back then, they're mixed so flat.
Yeah.
And this was, even hearing it on FM radio was just like, whoa, what is this? It was a sound that you were only really getting in like West Coast hip hop at that time for that beefiness of the bass. And to hear it in a rock song, it punches hard now with, way music is. I mean, Muse, I think you listen to Muse and you hear a lot of this kind of sound now.
Sure.
There's a lot of other bands that are doing this now. But for me, like, generic, not that cool, not listening to that many indie bands, it's like, what is this? Lyrically, what are your thoughts on this song?
You know, I didn't dig into it lyrically.
That's okay. You could be forgiven for doing so. This is a song about someone being interrogated because their friend either got murdered or sexually assaulted. It is a crazy song.
Wow. Okay.
We took a walk last night, but it wasn't the same. We had a fight on the promenade out in the rain. She said she loved me, but she had somewhere to go. She couldn't scream while I held her close. I swore I'd never let her go. Tell me what you want to know. Come on. There ain't no motive for this crime. Jenny was a friend of mine. It's an insane song. It's the darkest song, and this to start your debut album with those lyrics is just nuts. I don't know if it would pass muster today. I don't know if I'd applaud it if it happened today. But for that time to make, hey, this is our statement to the world. This isn't the Thunder Rolls on your second album.
Right.
This is track 1, album 1. And it is the perfect encapsulation of so many other things they do on their songs where they get just disturbing, painful, difficult subject matter. And Brandon Flowers, one other thing I like about him is his willingness and eagerness to take on characters. He gets away from this for a while in the middle of the band, but then he comes back to it in his later albums, and he takes on this character that you don't want to like. You're singing along with him and then going, what am I singing?
Right.
Just Jenny was a friend of mine. Like, what the hell does that mean? It certainly implies some pretty bad things. And that at the same time, by the time you get to that end of the chorus, you're singing along because the song is so damn catchy.
Right.
And
I didn't even think about it. Like, I just didn't even...
And there's a reason it's never on the radio. But even the riff is so basic. The bass go do-do-do, and then the synth dun dun dun. It's everything about this song is simple and meant to lure you in so that when you get hooked, you're like, oh. And I think that's the Vegas in this band. You know, that is like, we're not responsible for what you do while you're here, but we're going to get you here.
Well, you know, it makes a lot of sense. My experience in Vegas as a player is, you know, put on a great show and everyone's happy and dancing. And as soon as you go backstage, if they saw what was behind the curtain, there's, you know, that's Vegas.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's just showbiz in general.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, but certainly in Vegas, the show you saw, if you just got to see 6 inches behind the curtain, it's like, oh, very different world.
Yeah.
And that certainly comes through with this now that I understand more about what it's trying to engage with. I just missed it.
It's hard to say, like, this is my favorite song by them. It's not my favorite song by them. And I more admire what it does and what it and the sound, of course, the mix of it. Yeah, that is worth calling out. But what it achieves is this pop rock song that is just disgusting, and yet, like, you cannot help but dive in. It's so cool to me.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is just, again, with the catchiness of it, is the drums end up going to like this disco kind of thing. So it's got like this late 70s throwback with all the way up to so it gets you moving and dancing. It's like it tricks you away from what the subject matter is. Because like I said, I missed it.
Being at a concert and hearing them play the song and hearing everyone sing along it's uncomfortable. And yet it's this weird, like, we all know what we're doing.
Wow.
It's wild.
All right. So that puts us at my number 5, which is All the Things I've Done.
But I'm not a soldier.
Yeah. So what does this one mean to you? Like I didn't look it up. I didn't look for an analysis, but I'm kind of curious what you get out of this lyrically.
This is a song that feels so much more important than it might actually be.
Yeah. Okay.
This is a hell of a stretch take I'm going to make, okay? This song makes me think of the 2003 version of A Day in the Life.
Okay.
The Beatles song. It starts with Paul, and then it gets to the attempts at being John, and then it ends with just the big louds. I know that's like weird and goofy, and I'm not comparing the Killers to the Beatles. But
I will, because this is the one when I listened to it, and I was thinking about all these homages and throwbacks, and this is their Beatles too.
Yeah, 100%. This is, again, like, this is also on Hot Fuss, their first album. I think it's track 5. And this is a hell of a choice to choose to release on your first album. Like, this is the second album when you get bigger than your britches, you release this song.
Sure.
But no, you're putting this smack dab on album 1. It kind of also reminds me of, like, Kanye West putting Jesus Walks on his first album. I'm like, what are you doing putting this anthem here? And you know what? It worked. Like, people responded to this song when it came out. I don't know if it says anything profound.
Neither do I. That's the thing.
I want a meeting from the back of my broken hand. I get, okay. I'm so much older than I can take. You got to help me out. None of these lyrics are that deep, and yet it's a great example of you package something right. You surround someone with the right type of music and essentially the right feeling. Every instrumentalist and every performer on this song, from the choir at the back to Brandon Flowers at the beginning, just kind of singing very, very softly. It's just wrapped in emotion.
Yeah, it's one of those tunes that seems to like plant a seed, and it's going to grow different for everyone whose ears on it. So for me, based on the title and then what chorus, I don't know if it's really the chorus, but I've got a soul, but I'm not a soldier. It just seems to me like the story is, without them telling you this story, that this is a soldier that went and had to go do some things that they're not okay with as they mature past having served. And so I think it's like someone who served and had to do some things that they're not okay with later in life, and then are trying to reconcile that and go, but being the soldier's not who I am. I've grown into something more as a whole. That's the story I kind of got out of it.
You know, I swear I've never thought about the lyrics of this song that deeply. And I think there's a lot of evidence looking at it to support the claim that you're making here. And I think that's probably the best thing that you can get. I have never sought depth within this song besides what it makes me feel inside.
Okay.
Which is, you know, it's probably weird for someone who cares so much about lyrics to feel this way about a song. You can make a strong case for this being a number one for this band. So I've seen them 3 times. The first time I saw them, they were prepping the Sam's Town tour. They were doing like a trial run show in the basketball arena at UC Santa Barbara.
Okay.
The second time I saw them was at Outside Lands. 2 very different, you know, indoor arena, outdoor arena, different levels of fame, different all kinds of things. But I've never seen a crowd respond to a song the way that people sing, just scream, "I got soul, but I'm not a soldier" in a crowd. Everyone's jumping up and down. It is powerful, and if the point of music and the point of art is to make people feel stuff, they could be singing the phone book in this song. The way that they play this song and the way that it's arranged, it's really, really impressive.
Yeah.
I like your read on the lyrics though. I've never thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm literally pulling it from, you know, a line that it's a, you know, what is it, 5 words, 6 words that just gets repeated 4 or 5 times, and then the title. And that's what I'm drawing all of the story from. Well,
and this is a trick that, you know, they do in Rut. And it's something that certainly I've tried to steal. I mean, I have a lot of songs like this where you just find this refrain at the end. And I know me doing this is inspired by the end of this song. That if you can just find a line that lets people grasp onto something. And in my song, you know, Love Falls Out Every Day, I want people to leave my shows being like, what the hell do I mean? I pretend I'm a space woman's daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, Golden State, the end of that song is directly inspired by this. That idea of like, I don't care if you understand it. It means something to me. I'm going to sing it with everything I got, and I hope it works.
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, it's an interesting tune. I don't know that I really get the meaning, but I certainly get the feels.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
And the choir at the end of the song, too, just adds so much. The gal singing at the end. It's the one knock I have on this song, it feels like a producer got involved, and it's their first album, so I can see it happening. It happens twice near the end of the song where he just goes, time, truth, and hearts. And it makes... it undermines the song just a tiny, tiny bit. And I don't know if he was feeling that in the studio. I don't know if someone said, hey, you should have this like cool esoteric, like, you know, concepts that everyone can grasp or something. I don't know. The only knock I have is that he says that twice at the end of the song.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a little bit of his immaturity.
Watch that actually point. Is like the thing that matters most to him.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's like you writing your song, use the inspiration. The guy says, take out the one line that inspired the song.
Exactly.
You know, you never know. All right, so your number 5 is a duet with one of my favorite singers.
Yes, it is called... Wait, why did I just lose it? It's called Runaway Horses.
Yeah.
And it's a duet with Phoebe Bridgers. It's my second song from the Pressure Machine album. And it is completely unlike anything else you've heard.
It sounds like more like one of her songs than one of his songs.
100%. And that's part of why it means so much to me listening to it, and also why I think it's effective. It's showcasing the very thing you've like complimented them on, is their ability to fall into other genres and not feel lost in those genres, not feel like they're stealing something but almost tribute-y. This song is slow. This song is meditative. It's pretty. It's called a duet, and it's featuring Phoebe Bridgers. It's really mostly him singing and her just singing pretty harmonies. There's no traded lines or anything like that. But again, the first line of this song, it's not gonna knock your socks off. Oh my heck! So yeah, the youth stampede. I mean, that's a tradition for sure. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. That's the story. That's the story. I'm looking at a lyric sheet here, and remember I told you they start with stories.
Right.
They don't normally do that, but they included it here. Small town girl, Coca-Cola grin, honeysuckle skin, born beneath the ruddy sign of a strawberry moon. He's not starting songs with first person pronouns. He's not starting he's painting pictures.
Right.
And this is something he did really well on the Sam's Town album. What I like about this album is they take the ideas of telling stories that they did really effectively on their second album, but then they approach them with this just complete reverence for the story and reverence for the images they're trying to paint, in a way that I think they were more kind of caught up in we're doing a Springsteen tribute on Sam's Town, which is fun and effective, but this all of a sudden it achieves that adult thing. I mean, it's not a country album, but it might as well be for the way that it does this. The harmonies.
Yeah.
If you've never listened to Phoebe Bridgers, she's not for everybody. Like, I could see people finding her boring, but she is for me. And if you want to hear her sing some really beautiful harmonies, listen to the band called Boy Genius, which it's her and Julian Baker and Lucy Dacus doing a lot of 3-part harmonies and stuff that is reflected well in this song.
I think Phoebe Bridgers is interesting because this might sound like a backhanded comment, but I don't mean it to be. But she's like the sort of the girl who goes to open mic, but is good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it's like the producers didn't get a hold of her and ruin her. Mm-hmm. She just sounds like a girl who's writing songs that she wants to be singing, and it's not Taylor Swift. It's just the girl at the coffee shop or the Wednesday night thing, but she's really good.
She's so good.
And to me, I really appreciate that she still sounds like the material and the way that she records and her voice and everything about her just seems like she's sort of a girl in town who wants to play her guitar and sing.
And yet she's so competent. The stuff she produces, the stuff that she writes. It's not a Phoebe Bridgers podcast. Honestly, she'd be on my short list of people to do if she had more than 2 solo albums.
Yeah.
She's got a couple collaborative albums that are great as well. But, I think of the Killers, they certainly swear every once in a while, but I think of them as like nice little Mormon boys from Vegas. And to hear them, when I heard that they were doing a song with Phoebe Bridgers, I was shocked. Phoebe Bridgers has this really funny tweet that is too vulgar to say on this podcast about the Killers, that she retweeted when the song came out, like kind of as a joke, because it had been pretty like critical of them. But to hear what they do together, it's really cool. And honestly, like the Killers don't have a lot of collaborations. They don't do a lot of vocal things. They are very much their own little universe. And so to know that they were doing a duet with one of my favorite songwriters out there, and someone who writes beautiful harmonies, it's perfectly executed on this album.
Yeah, I think it's a great cut. And it's a simple little song. It's nothing that's really blowing your hair back in the sense that it's amazing. It's just a pretty little song.
But if you're listening to a Killers playlist, I think it's easy to get caught up in drums. And while the drummer's great and the music is great, there aren't a lot of songs that sound just like another song, but there is a certain feel that it can start to feel like, okay, I understand what this band does. Okay, how much more do I need to listen? And then when this song comes on, whatever the opposite of knocking you off your feet is, it just like sucks you forward.
Well, this particular band feels a lot like the conversation Marshall and I had back on episode 1 about Van Halen. Mm-hmm. We know Van Halen's signature sound. We know the Killer's signature sound. We haven't got to him yet, really. We've put all this other stuff on our list so far, but as we get to the top, we're going to get to this. This is the stuff that was on the radio. These are the songs everybody knows. Mm-hmm. But how many of those need to be on an essential playlist? Yeah. 1 or 2, I think.
That I had a lot of casualties for just that reason.
Yeah.
I had 3 songs that I was like, yeah, these are all kind of the same song, and I think I picked the one they did it best.
Right. And I picked a number of them as we get further along here, but I don't expect them all to make the list, because I think that understanding that this is mostly what they do, but they have this ability. I mean, Marshall and I put Ice Cream Man at number 1 for Van Halen. and because we really think that that's the number one. We both played the tune and we love the tune. But it didn't bother us that we didn't put Panama, or we didn't even talk about Jenny's Got a Gun. And so with the Killers, I expect when we get to this negotiation at the end, we're going to find that
your list is probably going to have more than mine at the end of the day. But
I don't know. I'm open to negotiation here. All right. So that was your 5. So it puts us at number 4. And I put Human. It's asking an interesting question, and you could take it to be really esoteric, I guess.
I'm having so much fun watching you look for the words here.
Yeah,
'cause that's the song.
It is. It's an interesting idea. Are we human or are we dancer? Well, what does that even really mean?
And it was a joke when people made fun of this song when it came out. It was the first single, I believe, off this album.
Okay.
And it was that the question you were asking was like, should we take this seriously or not? I don't know.
Well, and I don't know that they took it super seriously.
So, I texted you when you sent me your list right away. You went with Human over Spaceman was the first question I had.
Yeah, that is true.
Because I think they were the 2 singles off this album, and I think which one you choose just says a lot about what you want out of a song. For me, I'm a Spaceman guy because I just want to sing. I want to do the chanting. I want to jump up and down. I picked a different song on my list that kind of does that same thing. But Human, on the other hand, is no, I want that space. I want. Don't beat me over the head. Let me float. Let me think, and I'll get where I want to be.
Well, to me, I won't say that this is the one where I think they're doing an homage to Dave Matthews, because they never sound like that band. But I think lyrically, Dave likes to ask these kinds of really esoteric questions that are almost nonsense. We're going to do a comparison that I'm not going to define what it means. I'm just going to have this plant a seed and have you understand what it means. And that's kind of why I like it. So I think
I've seen the Killers as a band twice. And then in 2015, I saw Brandon Flowers touring the Desired Effect album at the Fox Theater in Oakland. And he did all that album. He did a couple songs off his first solo album. Excuse me. He only did 2 Killer songs at this show. The Mr. Brightside was the finale. Okay. But the only other song he did was Human. And I like the song. I'll sing along. I've never skipped it, but also it's not one that I'm ever seeking out as a Killer song. But the way that he performed this song on this tour, it was even more sparse than the record. It was just like a beat and a very light bass line. Mm-hmm. And it was almost this experimental thing that he's singing the song. And it changed that song for me. It made it a song that was oh, this is he's able to achieve that question that he's asking and make it feel like an honest question. And it made me believe that this song wasn't as silly as I had always dismissed it as, and it did help me appreciate it in a new way. It's a cool song. And my sign is vital. My hands are cold. I'm like, what? It belongs on a list, and there are quite a few songs on Day and Age that are getting burned here from both of us. I mean, Dustland Fairy Tale is a great song, and they released recently a version of it featuring Bruce Springsteen, which is worth checking. It's streaming somewhere. And then Neon Tiger, I think, is a really fun song too. But I think if we're trying to capture the essence of Day and Age, I think Human probably is the song to pick. Yeah,
I also think that just the plural singular, how it's done, are we human or are we dancer? That's an interesting choice, and I'm sure it's very purposeful. And it just, that's enough to kind of go, well, what's that about? And then there's the comparison. My hands are cold, which would indicate death, but my signs are vital, which
and also,
indicates life.
We can't ever forget, whenever we're trying to analyze some kind of literature or lyrics or poetry or something, there's always the other side. I've learned this over time. Whenever you think you know what it is, you kind of then have to immediately interrogate, what if it's the exact opposite? What if it's totally not that? And this song, I don't think Brandon Flowers does drugs, but maybe that's just what it, who knows?
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting tune.
Absolutely.
I think it's probably the one on my list that sucked me in most lyrically. But I also think that there's a haunting element in the production and arrangement of this tune.
It's a well-produced song.
Is also really cool. So, it was a hit I didn't know that at launch it kind of had some
it was
goofiness around it.
It's their third album. They had two big hit albums, and all right, what are they going to do? And I think a lot of people's question was, oh, that's what they're doing. Okay, and whether that's fair or not, but I think that's how it was received. I think I think they found a way to make that song really punch, and I don't knock you at all for hitting it, for choosing it.
All right, well that means that we're at your number 4,
which is Can't Deny My Love. We've already talked about it. It's, to me, probably the strongest track on the Desired Effect, the Brandon Flowers solo album. It's the only song I included there, even though I could choose a bunch. I'm just going to use this time to talk about some other songs you should listen to on that, because I think we've hit Can't Deny My Love really well. Dreams Come True is the closest thing to a real Killer song on that album. It's the title track, or it's the opening track.
Right.
And it does feel like a Killer song, which is why I didn't think was necessary to include here, but God, it's a great song. I Can Change is weird and very like, it's not a Genesis song, but it's got that weird like echoey effect thing going on with it. And then Digging Up the Heart is another just great kind of straightforward rocker song that Desired Effect probably, when you're done listening to our playlist, just go listen to that album front to back. It's so good.
Good stuff. All right, so we can jump ahead to number 3, which is Somebody Told Me.
Pause. Can we just save this? Can we save our Somebody Told Me for a little bit?
You want to talk about it when we get to the crossover?
Yes.
All right. So, spoiler alert, this is a crossover.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about Somebody Told Me later.
His spot. All right. So, back to you, number 3.
In the Car Outside.
Yeah.
This is, to me, the Quiet Town is the most meaningful song off that Pressure Machine album. But In the Car Outside is, from what the Killers ended up starting out as to what they've become, I think like this is the song where everything coalesces. It's got the rockiness of their first album. It's got the storyteller and the Vegas-y of their second album, and yet it's a singer-songwriter-y song. I'm in the car. I just need a place. I needed to clear my head. She's in the house with the baby crying on the bed. She's got this thing where she puts the walls so high. It doesn't matter how much you love. It doesn't matter how hard you try. This line makes me cry every time I hear it, and I don't know why. We got a place with a fence and a little grass. I put this film on the window and it looks like chapel glass. But when she turns, it's like the shadow of the cross don't cast no blessing over our lonely life. It's like waiting for a train to pass and I don't know when it'll pass. I'm not going to swear, but I want to swear at how jealous I am of those lines.
Yeah.
Just the way you deliver it. I got this film on the window and it looks like chapel glass. It's songwriting that is not, again, it's not reaching for metaphor. It's not going beyond, and yet it says so much in just an action. It's a show don't tell line.
Yeah.
And musically, it's a fun song. It's not going to blow your face off in the way that some of the other songs we've talked about are or will talk about, but it's taking this young songwriter that I fell in love listening to in 2003 and hearing the kind of stuff that he's releasing. I think this was like 2022. This album came out. Now I feel stupid. I got to look it up. But
while you're looking,
yeah.
I want to say that to me, this is the homage, I think, to U2.
Yeah, I can hear that. Which is funny because I don't really love U2.
Neither do I. Well, I don't want to say that. I like the one album.
Sorry, August 2021 is when this album came out.
Okay. I like the Joshua Tree. I like the one U2 album, and then everything else is like there's pepperings that I enjoy. But this, to me, just felt like, oh, they're trying to sound like U2 here. And I think they do it in a way that doesn't feel like it's the same as all these other ones.
Yeah, 100%. I hear, for me, it was like there's a Bruce Springsteen thing more than U2, but the second you said U2, I was like, oh, yeah, you're probably right. There's something that in the chorus, he repeats it a couple times, and it's just swear to God. The idea of how like rule breaking it is to say swear to God in a song, like I'm desperate to convince you of this. You shouldn't do that. If a kid came to me with a song that said swear to God in the lyrics, I'd say no, please no. And yet, when you can break the rules that effectively and make it matter so much, this is probably the most mature song they have. Musically, everything about it is. This is like when they peaked. If they don't come out with any more music, I'll point to this song. And it's not my number 1, it's my number 3.
Sure.
But this to me is the best that they can be. It's everything in concert.
Yeah, it's a great cut. All right, so my math says we're at my number 2, which is When We Were Young. Mm-hmm. This one I think I played this with Marshall and Cisco, but I think my first exposure to this, and probably the Killers in
Marshall
general.
sing it?
I think so.
I would love to hear Marshall sing this song.
Maybe Cisco sang it. I don't remember.
Okay.
Because they switch so often.
Yeah.
But this was Guitar Hero.
Oh, interesting.
This is a tune that was on Guitar Hero. And when I talked with Tyler Bates from Us for Love when we did the Dave Matthews episode, he credited his entire musical career from Guitar Hero, from
wild.
that video game, and going, well, I always want to learn how to do this for real.
Oh my God.
And I thought, what an, like, because
Different generations.
Right. Another,
Yeah.
8 years behind you, he probably, maybe not quite, but he's a bit younger than you still. I'm like, wow, what an impact that game had. And then I was thinking, like, as I was making this list, that I'm pretty sure that I know this song from that video game too.
That's funny.
But besides all that,
Yeah.
what a cool song.
Yeah, this song came out my sophomore year of college, and it's such a good, and it's Springsteen to the core. And it was for their second album to go from the two songs we're about to talk about in a little bit being their defining sound to then come back and do this. It was such a jar, and they're wearing their nudie suits and the bolo ties and all this kind of stuff. Like they went hardcore rhinestone cowboy for this album,
right?
Which was a huge shift from the Shadow Play, Joy Division look that they had in album one, and it was pretty bold to reinvent themselves this way. But when you can execute as well as they do on this song, good Lord.
The other thing I want to talk about this one in particular is I really want to talk about Ronnie's drumming here. And very specifically, like I've talked before on the show about like how Neil Peart and Stuart Copeland would take these sort of mismatched genre kinds of grooves and change them from verses to choruses. So they'd have like a reggae verse and then like a punk chorus and then a world music outro and all these different things. Ronnie's doing that like mid-phrase. So phrasing in music is like what we think of as like, okay, we got a repeating pattern of chords, and they're usually 8 or 12 bars, unless they're you, then they're 14.
Sorry. Or 7.
Or some other number that doesn't make any dang sense. You and Jimmy Buffett. But typically they're groups of some multiple of 4, typically. And then it's, a set of changes, and then another set of changes, and it wraps back to the beginning. And the drummer's job typically is when you get to the end of a phrase, you play drum fill to kind of let everyone know, especially this is like also, it's musical, but it's also functional. If the drummer's like sort of counting and feeling when those changes are coming, he's cluing the drop-in guitar player, the drop-in bassist who may not really know this material as well. Like, and we're back to the beginning of the phrase. Yeah, it's also a clue.
Yeah, absolutely. People need help.
So, right. But what Ronnie does is he's putting these groove changes mid-phrase. He'll play, like the first 4 bars will be rocking, and then he'll like go to the toms, then he'll come back and do like a disco beat. And he'll do that all in the same 12-bar phrase. And the next 12-bar phrase won't be the same. And there's a lot of, and that's why I think the drumming on this is so intricate, and why I think this guy really deserves to be talked about in drummer circles and be paid more attention to is he's doing something on these Killer albums that I've never heard anyone do. And it's not that it's stuff we've never heard happen, but he's applying it in such a way that I've never heard be as musical.
Well, and it's worth noting, this isn't some deep cut. Like, this was the single on the album that was on TRL. Like, this was a popular song. And so to take that kind of risk and be like, this is where we're going to try all this weird stuff, that now I need to go back and listen to it. Because for me, this song is one of the things I love about it is it does feel like this sum of its parts thing that gets delivered to you where I just swim in it when I listen to it. This was when the first time I saw them was they were preparing for the tour of this album, and I don't know that I'd heard this song yet when they played it live, and I was just like, I caught up completely. I was like, whoa, like this is not what I expected from this band.
Yeah, it's interesting to me also that you said that this is the Springsteen one for you, because to me, I hear that, like how you the comparison. This is kind of Neil Young to me.
Okay.
Lyrically, not musically.
Okay,
but
yeah.
Lyrically, I think this is kind of a Neil Young thing for me and how I relate to it. But it's just interesting that these guys are doing new original music that evokes us listeners into, oh, this reminds me of this. They're clearly channeling the really great players of the past in their music without it being like, we have difference of opinion on even who they're channeling, but we both found that it feels like somebody else.
Well, and like listening to your Jerka episode about the police. Like you guys, the influences you're pulling, what I thought was cool, and you guys point out, was the way that they did things that maybe hadn't been done before in pop rock music. The Killers are the antithesis of that. Like, they're inventing nothing, and yet,
but they're applying it in new ways.
Yes, absolutely. And I did not grow up listening. We had country music, we had Creedence Clearwater, Bob Seger, and the Eagles. Like, I was not raised listening to cool music as a kid at all. And in fact, like I got to college and it still took me a while to be like, oh, what is this? My dad would play Neil Young, but I didn't get into it in that way. I am as square as you can get, and that's where my Murphys, I grew up in a small town in the mountains, like really shows as for my music taste growing up. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably why the Killers mattered so much to me. Is like when I did hear about these 80s rock bands that were doing things with synths and weird vocal stuff, I was like, oh, this is cool. But my way into them was the Killers. I didn't grow up listening to Bruce Springsteen. My mom loves Bruce Springsteen, but we didn't listen to him. And so when I hear Sam's Town, this album, I mean, I was 20 years old. It's so embarrassing to admit, but that was my route into a lot of these bands that, frankly, I should have known and should have been listening to growing up as someone who, aspired to play music.
Right.
But I think that says a lot about why I connect so much with this band also, is that I heard so many things that I was like, of course I love this. How could I not love it? And then when you start interrogating where those sounds come from, you find out, oh, the reason they do this so well is because they learn from these people that are worth listening to also.
Right.
And I
think these guys are good students of music.
Completely.
I think at the end of the day, as I was hearing you talk about it and thinking about it, this is a band that paid attention to what the predecessors had recorded. They took the elements of it and created new, interesting, original stuff that, like I said, they're not reinventing the sound, but they're applying it in different creative ways and then engaging lyrically in unique ways.
And that goes right into my number 2, which is from the same album, The River is Wild. It's much later on the album. I think your song was like the second or third track.
Yeah, 3, I think.
3, and mine is like the second to last one. Or maybe around there. I should probably look it up. I'm going to make such bold claims on a podcast.
Everyone else can has Google. They're okay.
But This River is Wild, I knew that when you were young, just by virtue of it being such a great song, was going to be high on your list. So I gave myself the pass and said, if I could pick a song that does the same thing for me, to just highlight another song, it was This River is Wild. Sonically, it's a very similar song. I don't know about can't speak to the drums part that you pointed out, but he's doing similar things lyrically. Vocally, but I think the lyrics do a little more for me on this one. Mm-hmm. And I think he does. He's some cool inflection things. He lets his voice crack at times in this song. He's got that same anthemic thing at the end of some choruses. But Run for the Hills Before You Turn. Honestly, it's a more song that the imagery of it speaks to my heart a little more than when you were young, because I was young when the song came out.
Sure.
And I'm certainly not anymore. I think in head-to-head, I'd give it to When You Were Young, but both of these songs, The River's Wild and When You Were Young, are just phenomenal rock songs.
Yeah, I think When You Were Young probably has a better lyrical presence, but that drum track on River is Wild is probably the best drum track of the entire catalog.
It's nuts.
he's just playing, man. And the thing about that drum track also is how busy it is, how it still completely supports the vocals.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good lesson for drummers to not dig into. It kind of goes back to one of the arguments you and I have had over the years of a recording process. You and I are great friends and we hardly ever get into it with George until we start recording.
Yes.
And this is...
I think I tweeted recently, it's not a real album recording process if someone doesn't threaten to quit the band at least once.
Yeah, right. This is one of those ones that supports my argument to me, in that...
And so you're very happy I chose it.
Well, no, but I just mean it's the idea that the drums couldn't support the vocals if they weren't playing to the vocals already being done.
Yeah.
or it has been toured with and nailed down so completely that you understand it. But if you go into a studio with a new song and the drums go first,
it wouldn't work on this one at all. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You can't just lay down a drum track and then have everyone play on top of it.
I mean, and what I think everything you're saying is holding up very well. I think the difference between their first album, Hot Fuss, and their second album, Sam's Town, is their first album is very much, you can tell these are songs that they'd been kind of grinding in a club for a while. Whereas matching the imagery of the second album, it feels like they just stood in a desert and played these songs for a week straight over and over again until they found like, this is it. And this divine inspiration came down to them. Right. And then finally they went in the studio.
Sure.
Yeah, I hear you on that one.
Yeah, and I think that you know, I'm not trying to do I told you so and I'm right here. But
you waited till number 2.
Yeah, I just snuck it in. But really, it's just one of those tunes that it's so hard as a drummer to have the correct energy and really do it when you're laying down the first thing. Mm-hmm. And this is just one of those tunes that it just supports everything else so well. And maybe he's just a monster. Maybe he can do that and I can't. That's certainly in the realm of possibility. But I just think it's just, they just line up in gear so well. That's and cool. Just wanted to point that out.
Okay, there will be no surprises in our number ones. I don't think anyone who knows the Killers is going to be.
So my number one is the one we haven't talked about even a little bit yet, which is Mr. Brightside. Mm-hmm. This is just so much fun to play. As a drummer, this is
every instrument.
Well, maybe, yeah, but it's just fun to play. It's just a fun tune to play. It's fun to listen to. It's fun to dance to. There's nothing about this that's just not fun.
Yeah, I listened to an interview with Brandon Flowers, and he was talking about it. I was surprised to hear him close his show at the solo show I saw with this song. I was like, wow, okay. I thought he'd be eager to break away from this. And he said, every door that I have has been opened to me because of Mr. Brightside. He goes, everything I have comes from that song. Of course I'm going to play it. Even if I was sick of it, I don't care. It's so much fun to celebrate what this song has done for me. And you kind of, yeah, that is the right attitude. It's ubiquitous. I'd like to start with some criticisms.
Okay.
It's the same song twice. The verse, chorus, and then the exact same verse and the exact same chorus, and then he sings "I Never" over and over again. It's not that interesting of a song, lyrically.
No.
Also, like, you know, a songs can't be that complex if I can play the electric guitar part. Because I'm not a great electric guitar player. I can play the riff on the song. All of those things said, it is a perfect example of a pop song that doesn't have to do much to be perfect. It's not my favorite song of theirs, but it is hands down their best song, I think. And I think its popularity reflects that appropriately.
Yeah. And yeah, the energy level for all the instruments. It's a good jump around while you're playing, jump around while you're listening, play it in the car, play it in the club, play it in the arena. It's perfect for like every mode.
And the stuff that gets like, it was funny when it came out, and we always wondered, like, this was the time when you bought CDs at Walmart. And so you were never sure if you got the edited version of a song or not.
Oh, right.
And so I remember buying this CD, and now they're going to bed, and my stomach is sick, and it's all in my head, but she's touching his chest now. He takes off her. And genuinely not knowing if that was like a changed lyric or not. And we take it for granted so much at this point that you're of course meant to think she's touching something else.
Yes.
And then it did play into that whole, like, are they Mormon? You know, because that was like a big part of conversation when they got big. It both in the song and then just meta about the conversation about this band. I was like, who are these guys that are coming out with a song that says this? Everyone learned the lyrics really easy because the second verse is just a repeat of the first verse.
Yep.
God, I was jealous of them. I still am jealous of them for being able to pull that off.
Yeah, it almost seems too easy for how successful it was. But at the same time,
it's a complicated track. When you listen to it, you're like, oh, this is...
it's well recorded and well produced, but from a songwriter point of view, from like what is actually there, it's like, duh.
Yeah. No,
here's how to write a hit.
I feel like I dove into just all the things that you can knock on this song, and because I honestly, it's kind of an unimpeachable song. Like, there's not a lot you can say bad about it. It's fun.
Yep.
You slap your thighs, you're singing it in the car, you sing at the top of your lungs. And you just, I mean, the amount of times I drove up I-5, just, I never, just over and over again. It's a great song.
Yep.
Which segues into your number 3?
My number 3,
and
your
my number 1.
And we saved it for now.
And this Somebody Told Me, which it's the second track on Hot Fuss. It's the first single they released. I remember the first time I heard this song, I was like touring colleges in Washington State with my family in the car, and I like made the car shut up to listen to the song. I was like, what is this? The breaking my back just to know your name. Everything about this song implies that there's more information to find out. The 17 tracks, and I've had it with this game, is like the end of that first line. I was like, do I need to go buy the CD? I'm so intrigued by what he's saying. Is there some grander narrative that I need to go find out about?
A little puzzle.
The lyrics are engaging. They draw you in. His singing is just bam. He hits you with the sounds that even the songs are breaking my back. It catches you in a way. And just again, nuts. Somebody told me you had a girlfriend who looked like a boyfriend that I had in February of last year. It's not that you had a boyfriend that looked like a girlfriend that I had in February of last year. It's not confidential. I've got potential. Those are not great lyrics. Those are the best lyrics. They just make me want to know everything about this guy. As an introduction to a band, and the bass, coming out of that chorus, the do 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 do. Oh, it's such a great song. This is the song. Even though Mr. Brightside is the better song, I think this is the song that they'll be playing 50 years from now. In the way that we're listening to the rock of the 70s.
I think they both survive. I think they're both great. I just want to like quickly compare. Mm-hmm. Somebody Told Me to Crossfire to the Phoebe Bridgers duet.
Okay,
this is all the same guy singing.
Yeah, it's nuts.
I mean, like I didn't even know his name. I knew that when we were coming out, okay, we're doing the guy from the Killers. Okay, we're just gonna do the Killers or whatever we're gonna do. Mm-hmm. Brandon Flowers, and then I listened to like this guy can do musically. Runaways. He sounds like Billy Joel. He's got a Billy Joel quality. He's got a Tom Petty quality, but he's also got Somebody Told Me in him. It's just wild. Not the vocal range for pitch, but the range of performance that this guy can make his voice do.
Part of the reason that this song gets my number 1, I obviously, I texted you. I was like, hey, Brightside's on your list, right?
Right.
We got Brightside covered. Okay, good. While this is, again, stealing from influences and adapting new stuff, what I love about Somebody Told Me is that changed rock music for the next 10 years. You can listen to Modest Mouse songs, and they have a song that I love that rips off this song. Every band that was the last bastions of rock music were taking influence from Somebody Told Me. The beat, the bass, the way of delivering the lyrics. There are bands that never tried to make mainstream rock. They were like, oh, I want to write a song like Somebody Told Me.
Yep.
You can dance to it. It is the best karaoke song.
Well, it could be sampled later if you get a hit out. Like, it's super cool.
And again, it's a song that from the second you hear it, you're just like, oh, the slow building like guitars. It doesn't. Its intro is just completely different from the rest of the song, and then it's just, again, that gear shift that he executes so well.
Yep.
He didn't have the bridges figured out this early. The bridge is kind of, okay, brace yourself for me. I said, baby, baby, please. I just don't know now when all I want. Okay, whatever.
I still think it's. I don't know. I still think it's interesting. I don't think it's slam dunk, but I think it's not a weak bridge.
You see where he's going to end up from this, of course.
Sure.
But no, in every way that Mr. Brightside is the perfect pop rock song, this is the perfect like modern rock song to me. And it's still pop too, of course, but
sure.
But I think you hear two different things. To me, it's kind of you can't separate in my mind early Maroon 5 from early The Killers just because they both came out the same summer.
Sure.
And it's kind of, you have the same thing there with Harder to Breathe and This Love. They're two very different songs that tell you everything you know about the band from those two songs. And I'm very happy that there are two number ones because I think at the end of the day, while In the Car Outside is like the apex of what they can do, I don't think it ever gets more fun than listening to those two songs.
I 100% agree. All right, man, we're going to take a quick break and rank these, and we'll be right back.
Cool.
That was pretty painless for a negotiation. I think you and I got through that the fastest of anyone ever.
Well, the one nice thing about The Killers is that, like, I mean, again, we've talked about, they do have songs that thematically or vibe-wise are similar. So, when we were discussing Jenny was a friend of mine, I was like, look, I can give that up because we got somebody told me. Like those songs, they're different, but like they do achieve something similar.
Right.
So it does become, and I mean, they're a band of, every album has a theme, every album has a distinct sound. And so
did we get all the albums, do you think? I wonder. We didn't even think about that as we did it.
One we got, yeah. The only one that's missing, the one, Imploding the Mirage didn't make it. That had, that was one of my songs, My Own Soul's Warning.
Okay.
Again, as I said when we were doing that album, that was more about the way it made me feel than necessarily anything they're doing great. It was like a transitionary album. So I'm not sweating losing that at the expense of some of the things that we've included here.
Right on. So number 1, Bright Side.
Yeah, that's The Killers is that song.
Yeah, it's certainly the song.
And number 2, right after it, Somebody Told Me. For me, that is a hard 1A, 1B. It depends on the mood I'm in, frankly. I lean towards Told Me, but I have no problem saying them. I mean, look at the popularity of those two songs. Bright Side wins. Handily.
Well, and then even our number 3 is pretty clearly the number 3, I think.
Yeah, When You Were Young. And it's worth noting that the top 3 songs are the first 3 singles off their first 2 albums. Like, they came out of the gate swinging so hard. Their music doesn't get played on the radio anymore. You could say that has to do with just rock music and its decline in general, or there's a lot of reasons you could say. But man, when the world was thirsting for mainstream, they did what the Strokes couldn't do. They did what all these bands couldn't quite achieve, and they really broke through with those 3 songs in a way that everyone was thirsting for. I agree. Number 4, one of yours. Yeah, it's in the car running. In the car outside. I mean, I know I'm kind of a sucker for this song, and this is the first one high on our list that doesn't have that popularity. But think of this as an opportunity to go listen to this song and experience it for the first time. And make fun of me for crying at the thing about the film that looks like Chapel Glass. Well,
and we've done 3 songs that have sort of the signature iconic sound. This is showing the versatility of what this band can do.
Well, we went from their first 2 albums to their most recent one, which was almost a full 20 years later.
Right. Yeah. So showcasing the growth.
Yeah.
All right. So number 5, I got my number 10 on here, which is Runaways.
You know, I just listened to the song again, and I remember listening to it when you sent the list originally. I was like, yeah, that's a great song. And I was like, yeah, I can't argue it. It's a really good song.
As soon as his vocals come in, it's got this piano intro. Ba-da-da-ba-ba-do-da-da-da. It's just this powerful first thing, and I love it. It just reminds me of a Billy Joel tune.
For whatever reason, that album just didn't connect with me in a way, and I think Runaways, my appreciation of that song as a good song was just kind of influenced by that, which wasn't fair, and I look forward to listening to that. I'm going to revisit that album later.
All right, so number 6, All the Things I've Done.
All these things that I've done. We talked about it. Weirdly, even though Mr. Brightside is the Killer song, I think if you wanted to make someone think of the Killers, you would say, I got soul, but I'm not a soldier. And that hook, the end of that song, is probably going to outlive the band. You know,
well, it's sort of the Seinfeld of the Killers.
Yeah, that's cruel and tragic that you're right. Oh, man.
Number 7.
Runaway Horses featuring Phoebe Bridgers, just showing the band versatility again.
Yeah.
I don't know that they have a song that comes close to doing what that does in their catalog, and to take a risk like that and just execute so effectively, it deserves a spot.
Yep. Number 8, Can't Deny My Love. This was a crossover for us. Maybe it even should have been higher, but some of these other ones are...
Well, we're talking about the Killers as a band. We don't want to spend too much time on just Brandon Flowers, although I've been very guilty of that in this episode. But... You know, I think there's a lot of solo songs he has that could deserve a spot on this list, but I think holding it to the one that we both had, that feels good.
Yeah, I agree. Number 9, we put Rut.
Which is where it was on my list, too. It's different. It's anthemic. It's kind of all these things that I've done 10 years later, which is funny because all these things that I've done kind of requires that stupid young swagger, whereas to Rut takes that with the insecurity that comes with getting older.
Yeah. And, the more you know.
It's not as fun to listen to, but it is, you know, up there is a great song.
And musically dynamic. Mm-hmm. All these other ones are, not all these other ones, but a lot of these other ones are really aggressive in your face. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of sound. It's intricate and it's well done.
Yeah.
But this one's really more minimal.
Yeah.
It's musical in a minimalist kind of way, which is not their usual go-to. And for me, that's a big part of why it's interesting to me.
I'm really happy that song connected with you. I was curious if it was you were going to be like, what is this doing here? And hearing your response to that's been rewarding.
Cool.
Number 10 was your pick from Day and Age, Human. I didn't really have a lot of fight for Losing Touch going against that. That was my pick from that album. Losing Touch is a little more, traditional, whereas to Human, again, I like Spaceman as a song more, but I think Human, again, showcases what this band is capable of and the way that it's able to kind of kick you in the shin just when you're like really feeling steady on your feet.
Yeah.
It's a cool song and it was very popular and it deservedly so.
Well, I feel like this is a good essential playlist for anyone who's not familiar with the Killers like I was. If this was the 10 songs I would have been shown 3 weeks ago before I really did my deep dive, I think I'd be listening to all these albums.
Yeah.
And in fact, probably will. This is a band that I'm going to put into my own personal rotation from.
You don't know how many times I've almost brought it to you guys, like, hey, we should cover like random song. And I've never quite had the guts to do it, but now that I've got you at least halfway on board, we'll see what we can do.
Well, Marshall and I already did a number of these.
Yeah.
Like, we're like the only person really to convince at this point is Dave.
I bet you we could talk Dave.
I think we can talk Dave into it too. All right. So what do we have coming up? What are the other shows? You've got a show without me. It's a string band show out in
Chinese Camp. I'm excited for it. It's on August 17th. We didn't intentionally cut Josh out. Josh had a commitment that he wasn't going to be available for it. So we said, hey, let's do something completely different. So it's not just replacing Josh. And then Josh is now available, but we're like, sorry, bud, you're staying home.
Yeah, whatever.
But so we're going to do a string band show. It's going to be me, Dave, and Marshall, and then Honey Run. So Owen and Kat from Honey Run are going to hop in, and Owen's going to play fiddle, Kat will play mandolin. And we're just going to see what it's like. We'll see how well my songs hold up. We did a show without you in Reno a couple weeks ago that you couldn't make because you had some issues. And I made that sound more dramatic than it was. Sorry.
Yeah. But, well, I mean, it could have been worse.
It could have been worse. And it was interesting to say, like, okay, it was a good challenge. But me and Dave are like, oh, we're holding this down in a way we don't normally do. And so it's an extension of that challenge, which will be. But then we got Labor Day weekend coming up, and that's going to be big. We're doing Friday night at Prospect 772,
right,
just west of Angels Camp. And then Saturday, we're at the Camp Connell General Store. And then I've got a little solo thing with Ben Eaton and Matt Axton on that Sunday out at Inner Sanctum.
Right. And then we got the two local festivals.
And Hermit Fest.
And Bigfoot.
And Bigfoot Fest. Oh, that's right. I've talked about it all morning at the radio station. I can't believe my...
Right. So Sunday at
3.
Yeah, afternoon.
Yeah, you, me, and Marshall. We're going to do kind of a laid-back trio set, but we've done many of them before, and they tend to be pretty fun.
And then we'll be at Hermit Fest again.
Hermit Fest.
Closing it down.
And that's always the Saturday after Labor Day weekend. So
right.
We got a rough, busy next couple weeks, and then we'll get back into the winter. And if you want to talk to the band about playing your house party, we will.
Yeah, please talk to us.
Also worth noting is that we're recording this on August 7th, and today is the day that we released the last single, and in fact the whole collection for the latest album that I put together called Hold Tight Together. That's got Blanket and Well and Gleam and Sticker, the Heart Sticker song, and Dreams, which is, I honestly, like, I hope that ends up on whatever list of you guys ever do my songs, because I'm so proud of Dreams. That one we produced with Kyle Williams from like Risky Biscuits, Goats Coach, all kinds of wonderfulness. And Josh plays some drums on that. This one, after the last album, All the Lies That I've Told, was very much a Grover Anderson, the Lampaliers. We're producing this together, we're writing it together, all this kind of stuff. This one I said, what if I took these songs to somebody who's not in the band and said, hey, here are the keys, here's some stuff, what do you put out? It's very different than anything we've done before. And I'm really proud of how it turned out, and I'm excited to have someone else's fingerprints on the music, because I think it does things that wouldn't come to me. Frankly, wouldn't come to most of us. Like, there are a couple ideas that are cool. The songs are really neat. And then on the streaming side, there's B-side, there's live versions of every song, or live or demo versions, including a version of Well that we did at Val Divino a couple years ago with you playing percussion. That is, with all due respect to Marshall, who's not on that track, I think it's the best our band has ever sounded live is our performance of that song. So it's like track 8 on the digital thing. It's called Well Live. I'm so proud of that song, how we performed on that. So worth checking out.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff coming up. I hope people come and see us and
Yeah.
And like I said, there's 2 music festivals here coming up at the very end of August at Bigfoot and Twainhart, and then in Bear Valley for Hermit Fest. If you don't have anything better to do that weekend, come see some music. Support your neighbors.
We do want to give a shout out to the gremlin that you've heard in the background of this entire show. My daughter Joelle has been here this whole time in the back, being as quiet as humanly possible. Joelle, you want to say hi? No, she doesn't want to say hi. She's so hot in this shed right now.
Yeah, we're going to get the air conditioner on. But look out, we are going to do one of Grover's music. The Lampaliers, the core Lampaliers, Dave and Marshall and I are going to get together and rate your tunes. And that should be a fun project for the guys in the band. And then I think I might do it with the extended Lampaliers and have Owen and Graham do it too.
Oh, that'd be hoot.
It'd be a fun thing to do. So look for that coming up, and we're going to go ahead and sign off and have a good day, y'all.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. This has been a pleasure. It's been really fun.
Cool, man. Thanks. All right, can you hear yourself talk?
Hi.
All right, so now we're going to say it. Here we go.
Episode
Just start again.
Episode 9, the
Essential
Killers with Grover Anderson.
Thanks, Joe.
Nice job, Joe.